Hey friends, I'm Crystal Bessie with the Louisiana Farm to School program. This month's Louisiana Harvest of the Month was grown by our nation's first president, George Washington. It's a root, but its leaves are also edible. Have you guessed it? It's sweet potatoes. Now let's learn a little more about the sweet potato, a vegetable with a history as colorful as its bright orange flesh. George Washington was fond of sweet potatoes and the farmers who grow them. George Washington Carver was a prominent agricultural scientist and inventor in the 1900s. He developed hundreds of products with sweet potatoes, like flour, ink, starch, vinegar, and even glue for postage stamps. Today, we're here in Baton Rouge with Allison Guidros, owner of Fullness Farms, and Dr. Don Labonte has come to visit us as well from LSU Ag Center. He's going to teach us a little bit more about sweet potatoes and how to grow them. This is Dr. Don Labonte, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about Louisiana sweet potatoes. He's a sweet potato breeder and a geneticist at the LSU Ag Center, and he's closely involved in the development of new sweet potato varieties. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks, Crystal, for having me.
Yeah, so would you like to tell us a little bit more about sweet potatoes?
Well, let's see. Let's start out by talking about a little bit about Louisiana sweet potatoes. You know, I think we always think of those as being some of the best out there in the world.
Of course.
And so I think it's really that care they take in producing the crop. That's a big deal. And when you harvest it, you do something called curing, where you kind of warm them up. You put them in a hot room after you've harvested them, and that increases the sugar content. And they're really good about doing that. And then you put them in this cold storage. So it's kind of a complicated crop to care for once you've harvested it. And so that even when you put it in that cooler temperature, it actually starts to increase the sugars again. So what's kind of neat is a lot of times our harvests are in that September, October period. And so when we get to that Thanksgiving holiday period, that's when everyone buys sweet potatoes, they're at their ultimate flavor. So they're just really, really good. So everyone says, yeah, these sweet potatoes are the best. And so I agree with them.
Yeah. Sweet potatoes are so beautiful in color. So tell me a little bit more about how the color works.
Yeah, that's one of those things that as I've been here for a number of years, I've really seen that develop far more. It used to be, we need an orange flesh sweet potato. Just give us a better one that yields more, better disease resistance. And now it's not so simple because we have different needs out there. So for instance, like if you go to California, and our growers are starting to find this too, they want a red skin sweet potato because there's markets that love red skin sweet potatoes. You know what? The consumer wants it, you deliver it to them. And so we've had to develop new red skin sweet potatoes, which we think are quite attractive and actually eye appealing. And so that's something that we've been working on. We also surprisingly can do a lot of work with white flesh sweet potatoes. This one has a little bit of a purple tinge to it, so it's kind of a really neat look to it. But white flesh sweet potatoes are actually what most of the world eats. They're about 95% of the world's production is actually white flesh sweet potatoes, not the orange types we eat.
Can you tell me a little bit more about how to plant sweet potatoes?
Sure.
Are they easy to grow?
If there is a tough plant out there, this is it. Sweet potatoes is probably the most indestructible plant. So if you don't have a green thumb, go for sweet potatoes. It works every time. And this is what the industry would plant. As you can see, there's absolutely no roots on that. You say, okay, that doesn't look like a very promising outcome, but really, if you look at if you look at the base of each one of the leaves, you're going to see some little tiny white bumps, and those little white bumps are going to turn into roots. And what's actually even neater is those little white roots that come out are going to form the storage roots.
When you say storage root, do you mean that's the edible part of the plant?
Yeah, this is what we call a storage root, is that. Actually, when we do our research plots to evaluate these to find out which ones yields the most, we'll actually still just use a broom handle to put them in the ground. And so what we normally do is we will put oh, that's nice soft ground. We'll put a nice hole in the ground like this. We'll then drop in a plant. Remember, it's these little joints where the leaves attached to the stem is going to be where the storage roots come out. We're going to put that in the ground. At least get 2 or 3 of those nodes in there. Go ahead and collapse that in like that. You know what? It's ready to go. It's that simple. And so as long as they have some water for about the first week, that's a big trick, is because those little white emerging roots do need water. And if they have that for about a week, they are going to come out nicely as a nice storage root. Now remember, sweet potatoes are kind of a tough crop. They don't really want a lot of fertilizer. They don't want a lot of nutrition. So it's almost kind of one of those things you ignore. It will do better. So it's kind of like tomatoes. You over-fertilize tomatoes, you get a bunch of vines. If you over-fertilize sweet potatoes, you're going to get the same thing.
Now let's head over to Judy and see what she's got cooking from the garden.
I love sweet potatoes so much that I named one of my cats Sweet Potato. Not because he's orange, but because he's so sweet. Orange vegetables like sweet potatoes are good for you, so good for you that the USDA MyPlate recommends eating 4 to 5 cups of orange vegetables a week. Here's a fun fact. The Spanish word for potato is papa or patata. And the name for sweet potato is batata. I'm here with Allison, and I have a few questions for you, Allison.
Great.
I come from the north, and I didn't ever see a sweet potato until I moved to Louisiana. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, sweet potatoes need to grow in warmer climates.
Another thing that I heard is that fresh sweet potatoes, right after you dig them out of the ground, aren't as good as sweet potatoes that have been cured. Why is that?
Yeah, so in the curing process, the starches in the sweet potatoes get converted into sugars, so that's why they taste sweet.
I think that's why I like them so much. I had my first sweet potato. It was a baked sweet potato when I first moved to Louisiana, and I've been hooked ever since. Louisiana sweet potatoes are an excellent source of beta-carotene, and it can supply you with great health-promoting antioxidant phytonutrients. They're also a good source of dietary fiber, especially if you eat the skin. So what I like to do is show people ways that they can fix their sweet potato and keep the skin on. So what I'm going to show you right now is how I dice them. So notice that I cut the sweet potato so that there's a flat side, so that I can just, it doesn't roll around on the cutting board. I'm going to trim off this root. Now, just slice. Like that, and then turn a little stack. Then and what you'll do is toss them with a little bit of olive oil, a little salt and pepper, put them on a tray and roast them up. We did a fun thing with the kids at the Knock Knock Museum in Baton Rouge. We took sweet potatoes, we roasted them, and they made little chips like this. Today we're going to show you a little bit of what we might do if we roasted some sweet potato wedges. You would put them on a plate with a little bit of salsa, some avocado, a squeeze of lime, and then give that a taste. So Allison, what we like to do is take one of these chips and dip it into the salsa, or you can use one of the wedges, one of the roasted wedges.
Great. Thank you so much.
Isn't that great?
Mm-hmm.
So we could hear the little crunch and that sweetness along with the savory. Oh, such a
Delicious.
Did you know that a sweet potato is not the same as a white potato, like the kind used to make French fries? Sweet potatoes are actually the root of the plant. True potatoes are tubers, which are the enlarged or thickened portion of the underground stems of their plant.
Thanks for joining us today to learn a little bit more about sweet potatoes. Now you can grow some in your own garden or cook some up in the kitchen. The Louisiana Harvest of the Month program showcases a different Louisiana food each month in Louisiana communities. We hope you will join us in tasting Louisiana this month.